Are meal times a serious struggle? Does your child eat a limited number of foods? Does your child eliminate entire food groups? Are you tired of waiting for them to just grow out of it? Welcome to How to Unpicky Your Picky Eater, where you'll learn strategies to help your picky eater expand their palate. With Christine Marathi Yoder, a pediatric feeding specialist, speech pathologist, mom of a child with feeding issues, and author of Mealtime Mindset. Let's get started. Here's Christine.
Welcome to the show. We have Jiuan Heng here. She is a homeopath, and she's here to talk to us today about detox and kids and toxins and all sorts of things related to feeding. And I'm very, very excited that she's here today. So welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much, Christine. Really, really excited to do this with you.
Yes. So the first, let's just dive in, because the first thing that whenever I recommend that somebody sees you, because we know each other. I've worked with you. You've helped me and my family to reverse and detox and just really all around helped us. But whenever I recommend someone to homeopathy, they're always like, well, wait, what is that? And I have a hard time explaining it as a layperson. So I thought maybe you can start by kind of explaining, what it is, or how people can understand it.
Okay. Maybe I should start by saying that I don't really understand how it works, but the principle behind this is that like cures like. So we are energy patterns, we are chemical patterns, that we are wholes, and we resonate with things in nature. And when we find that resonance, the imbalances start to rebalance themselves, and we get freedom. We are liberated from the things that bind us, the things that hold us back, and we're able to choose. So let me give you an analogy. I like to think of it very, very simply as finding the perfect fitting glove. You have this hand, you have your hands, and we all have different looking hands, right? Different sizes, different shapes. And if we force my size 7.5 hands, size 8 hands into a size 6 glove, it is really awkward. My range of motion is restricted. I can barely move my fingers, and I'm always feeling uncomfortable. But when I find the perfect size 8 pair of gloves for women, not for men, it's amazing. I feel amazing. I can do anything with my hands. I can go about without even thinking about it. Now that is freedom, isn't it? It's finding the perfect thing that fits you, custom made in a way.
I love that analogy. That is so good. And that's actually, I feel like when you worked with my son, that's kind of like what happened. I feel like we found the perfect cocktail, and he was just able to be his authentic self, without restriction, which is so nice and beautiful to see.
Yes.
He had so many sensitivities before. And, I remember talking to you, and we were talking about, possible toxin exposures, even at birth when I was given Pitocin. And, it's just something you just don't think about, especially in the moment where people are telling you, what you have to do and how to get the baby out as safely as possible. And you don't think about, them hanging on to those medicines and those toxins still. You assume, oh, well, that was in me. But really, it was in him too. And just finding
Yes.
that cocktail, it just allowed him to release some of those sensitivities, release the toxins. And he just thrives now because of that little switch that we kind of found.
Isn't that beautiful? And Christine, this is the thing about birth. It is such a rite of passage. And for one, I am so, so grateful for Pitocin, because I also had these moments in my birth processes where the baby got stuck. And if it were not for modern medicine, for Pitocin, one or both of us could have died. And I'm so grateful for Pitocin. But it is also a well-known fact that Pitocin is both a hormone and a neurotransmitter. It is like the gateway. And you think about it, this is such a beautiful, beautiful hormone, right? It is the thing that brings man and woman together. It promotes bonding. It promotes implantation. It supports the growth of the baby in almost like an envelope of love. Pitocin and oxytocin.
Right.
And Pitocin is the synthetic form. Oxytocin is the love hormone. And then at the right moment, oxytocin kicks in, and it's time for baby to get out, and it helps the mother's contractions. But when we intervene this process with an artificial hormone, it's not done in the way that it happens naturally in the body as pulsations with intervals. It's like injected, it's administered all at once, and all the oxytocin receptors are flooded. It really depends on how it's done. I think for you had 3 rounds of Pitocin, right?
Yeah,
and that's really massive.
I know, he was very stubborn. They were like, oh, just one should do it. And they were like, oh, I guess you're going to need more.
Oh my goodness. So, in yourself, the Pitocin receptors are blocked, and in him too. And when we rebalance this, it's a matter of like opening the lock. The keys got stuck. Let's clear the locks a little bit, and wow, the child's potential just shines.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Like a key in a lock, like just like unlocking.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's like such a good way of putting it. And Pitocin's only one small example. Like I'm sure you work with other families where there's more exposures to more toxin. And I mean, I'm sure I've been exposed to many toxins in my lifetime as a typical American growing up with McDonald's, and I've had many vaccines in my life, and just going through life as an American child, I've had a lot of exposure. But I'm sure you also work with families that maybe you're working on, not like Pitocin specifically, but maybe there's other toxins that have similar lock and keys that are you're trying to unlock different aspects for people, right?
Yes. And I mean, we don't really know at the start of the journey what it's going to look like. So it starts with taking a history, a timeline, preconception, conception, birth process. Were there any miscarriages? What was the state of mom? What was the state of dad's occupation, any occupational hazards, for instance, and then the critical moment of birth, and the month or so afterwards. And sometimes it's not even a question of toxins. Sometimes it's a question of the incarnation process. Was there something that was interrupted that prevented mother and child from bonding? Was there something, was there a struggle in mom that wasn't quite resolved at the time of birth? Were there thoughts of terminating the baby that had a big impact on the unborn child? In terms of toxins, I think the most dramatic case history, there's the case of a child who, upon when he cleared the albuterol that he was given I think a week or 2 after he was born, it was such a dramatic moment, and we know that it was dramatic because the way the mom told the story was there was something the matter with his breathing, and there were about 10 residents all gathered around, and his heartbeat just was like over the top, and they had this moment where they were wondering whether this little infant would survive. And that is a life and death moment for the child. And among all of the various things that were not quite right in this child's development, what is amazing is something like albuterol clearing can open the doors for this child. It's like everybody in his environment noticed it. The aides in school were writing to her, to mom. The therapists who are working with the child were writing to mom. And it's like this, I remember this week so clearly. She was sending me texts like, wow, look at this, look at this, look at this. It's like, whoa.
That's amazing. Right. And it's like, that's like it, and it, at the time it was like you said, it was probably like very necessary, similar to Pitocin, right? But there is a lasting effect of it, and clearing that from the body is just like so transformative that it's like, wow, I wonder what else is possible, right? With homeopathy. It's incredible.
I would say the key the key thing, though, is to find the remedy that the child really resonates with, or that the person resonates with. And this may not be a toxin. It could be a flower. It could be a tree. It could be an insect. It could be a mineral. And something that has the holistic picture of the person. So something that covers the mental, the spiritual, the emotional, and the physical patterns of being. Wow. And when we find that, it's like, well, you've seen this in Luke, right? Your child.
Yeah.
So beautiful, a little flower that that even addresses things like his unwillingness to have his hair washed or cut.
Yes. It's like these like little things. And sometimes we just chalk it up to, oh, well, that's just his personality. Or, oh, he never liked, people touching his hair, or he never liked having his hair washed, not thinking that might be actually linked to something else that we can kind of, like you said, unlock that. And all of a sudden, they might enjoy it. Like now he likes it when I brush his hair, and he never did before.
Wow.
Right? So it's like, oh, like you might think, well, that's just his personality. But if it really isn't, if his personality is really that he would enjoy it, and I'm, preventing him by not, trying out these other alternative like treatment type things. Because, I know some parents they probably get nervous about trying unknown things that their pediatrician can't explain to them because they just don't know about it. But is there any like downsides to homeopathy? Is there any danger ever with it, or is it pretty, benign and safe?
Is there any danger? Okay, so I've had a case where a child got into the mom's medicine cabinet and took remedies that were meant for another member of the family. And he had a big reaction. And she said, it's never been like that. What's going on? And she sent me pictures, videos, and I told her what to do. And within minutes, the reaction went away. But in that case, it's a case like of anything else. This child was not supposed to take this remedy. But it's not as if his kidneys needed to be flushed out or his liver or anything. It's not a lasting damage. It's about it's not even a damage. It's a disturbance of energy. It's bringing down the level of discomfort, the level of disturbance by neutralizing the remedy reaction.
Gotcha. But that's good to know because, you see all these commercials for medications and all of the side effects, but really it's not, a side effect. Like you wouldn't have to worry like that we're gonna like really truly harm them, that they'd have to go to the hospital. It would just be like a reaction, like almost like a rash is like a reaction to something, and then it goes away like that.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And there have also been cases where, moms would call me and say, oh, he swallowed a whole bottle of this or whatever. What am I going to do? And the truth is, if there's no reaction, there's no need to worry. If there is a response, I can help you to bring down the intensity of the response. But he shouldn't be taking that if that's the case.
Right. Like anything else, you keep it out of reach, and you like any other thing. Right. That makes a lot of sense. And now, what types do you work with all ages or predominantly children with certain conditions? Like, what would you say is like the main issues that you see?
Um, I see a lot of women. I see children. I really love working with children. What conditions do I see? I also see men, but I think it's mostly, I think women are the ones who like to work on themselves um, before things get too drastic.
Right.
So I think people are looking for transformation. Those who are looking for transformation, who are willing to work with symptoms. So what I mean by that is that we're looking for fundamental healing, and in the process of healing, you may experience some discomfort. For instance, some belching, some farting, as things die off, you know that, or some histamine reactions, a little like things like mosquito bites can come up sometimes in the process of clearing, a little rash. People who understand that true healing is not about the suppression or cessation of symptoms immediately. It's a process of healing from within so that chronic diseases or tendencies towards chronic diseases become less and less until they're only acutes. And then the acutes become less and less frequent. And the person feels better and better, more and more capable of dealing with anything that life throws at them. And for a child, it can be as simple as, wow, I feel so good, mom. I feel so good taking this, and I feel so good speaking to her. And that's a beautiful journey. And it doesn't need to be, something really heavy. It could be, I talked to Jiuan and my cough went away. Or sleeping better, eating better, pooping better, very fundamental markers of well-being.
I love that. And I so agree with you about, I think a lot of people that are seeking help, sometimes they almost like they assume like when you go to a doctor and they prescribe something to make the symptom go away, but that doesn't actually cure you of that disease, right? That's
Yeah,
just maybe eliminating the symptoms so you don't have symptoms. But if you really want to heal, you actually have to release what
exactly.
is inside, right? And you have to work through the process. Like that's kind of what I explain to our parents who want to help their kids eat better is that it's not it's not actually all about them. Part of it is you and learning to release some of your own
Yeah,
past fears and healing around food because that's a part of this whole thing. And sometimes when things come up, like you said, it's almost like a little rash or, like something uncomfortable. But on the other side of that is like, oh, wow, now everything is it's so much better. And I could just, like you said, deal with whatever comes my way. It's not a problem like it used to be. It's that's what the healing process is, right?
yes. The
Yeah,
feeling of inner capacity, inner strength, that
yeah,
you can go through this journey in
right,
life.
right. And I see that even in my son, because remember, he had the eye sensitivity and he like the sun would bother him. Like
Yes.
he would cry as soon as he saw the sun. Even he wouldn't wear sunglasses or hats. Like he would cry. He wouldn't even put his hands in front of his face. Like, like if the sun bothers you, just kind of cover your face. But now it's like he can kind of like deal with it. Like, okay, it's sunny, but like I don't have to break down. Like he can just put his hand up. He can put sunglasses on. He can he can, there's a solution. There's no more meant like breaking down about it, which is tremendous.
It's awesome, isn't it? Because then it enables him to enjoy the sun, to go out into well, not even go out, just at home, right? Like when the sun rises, I can deal with the day. And the
Yeah.
beautiful thing is, this is related to the sensitivity to his hair being touched and combed. And that is, I think that's the beauty of this modality of healing. It connects such disparate symptoms into a
Yeah.
picture.
100%. Like when like, it was like a 2 hours that you were asking me questions about everything. Like you said, from before he was born, what my husband does, like everything. And all of the symptoms that I was seeing, and you just kind of like connected them and you're like, oh yeah, all of those. It sounds like, I think it was like belladonna or something. You were like, oh, he kind of like aligns with the properties of this specific. And I think is it a flower, belladonna?
Belladonna, yes.
Yeah, but it was just like this, like, and I never would have been able to put all of that together, but you were like, oh yeah, all of these tiny little things about and how he's particular about this. It's all kind of in line with this one element. Like you were saying, it could be flowers, it could be an insect, it could be whatever.
Mhm.
But just so you know, that's so fascinating to me. Like I think that's incredible.
I'm so grateful to you, Christine, for not freaking out when I said your son needed belladonna, because belladonna, as the flower in nature, is poisonous. You would never want to give your son belladonna as an herb, right? Because it has atropine, and um, there are pharmacological effects that we don't want to get into. But as a homeopathic remedy, belladonna has been ultra diluted to the point where it has no remaining chemical or biological substance. And it's just an energy resonance that can correct, resolve, neutralize these imbalances, the photophobia, inflammation in the brain, what else? Extreme pain, sensitivity, fear sometimes, and his resonance to light, right? The way he's attracted to rainbow colors. Such a beautiful, beautiful remedy in the appropriate circumstance.
Right. Yeah. That's it. Yeah, that is important to know because of course I research everything and don't give belladonna. Belladonna is poisonous. And I was like, no, no, no. I know she's not giving me anything that's gonna harm him. And he's perfectly fine. Of course, he's taken it many, many times. Um, and you brought up inflammation, and I think that's a lot of times at the heart of a lot of our kids um with on the autism spectrum. And also we see like a lot of gut problems and with our picky eaters, constipation, and a lot of them have eczema and hives and rashes and things like that. um, and you must work with reducing inflammation, and how does homeopathy help with that?
Um, it's a big question. So let me put it this way. I think many people talk in terms of root causes. I do not think I don't work in terms of tracing causality, but we do look for triggers. And I think the foundation for most people, for actually anybody, especially children, is the health of the gut. In a developing child, in a very young child, the immune system, um, it all begins in the gut. Histamine reactions, mast cell activation, neurotransmitters. The gut has to come into balance. So that you could say is a foundation. And I find that I think our microbiome, for both parents and children, has been very disturbed. We find a lot of gut issues. So I use remedies to rebalance the gut. Um, Inflammation, in terms of like resolving inflammation, we want to know what are the possible triggers. Could it be heavy metals? And then if you do have heavy metals, then there will be fungal issues, because Candida, for instance, is a scavenger for heavy metals.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. So that's yeast, right? Candida, that's a yeast. Mhm.
Yeah. So all that has to come into balance. And sometimes it's not even a question of addressing the heavy metals directly, but how do we establish the base so that we can go on to later detox, to clarify, to rebalance the more difficult problems. And then, we might want to ask, I think a lot of children come to me with tests, like, okay, aluminum is very high, as arsenic is high, and so on. Then we have to ask, what is the source of aluminum?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And once we get down to that, then it's a question of, okay, do you really want to, do we want to go ahead with clearing this? How can we support the body in this process? And the younger the child, the easier it is to do that. Now, homeopathy is one thing, but what you do is so important because you still have to eat. The child cannot just survive on medicines or remedies. The fundamental basis of health is food, is feeding, a variety of things, and that is the process of growing gut health. And then the inflammation takes care of itself. I think we also evolve with the environment, I believe, to deal with little things here and there. When it comes to heavy hitters, sometimes dealing with the pesticides in the environment can make such a big difference. The glyphosate, the things that kill the bugs are also in a way killing our microbiomes.
Absolutely. Yes, that's a huge one. And that's why organic is, so important.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. What else? Inflammation. Sometimes it's a question of avoiding the things that can prevent the body from resolving inflammation. So, a history of antibiotics. How can we avoid going reaching for the antibiotics in the first place? It's not that they don't have a place, it's that we have to build our immune system from the ground up so that it can deal with pathogens, with toxins, and so on.
I love that.
How
That's
can
so
we?
important.
Yes, yes. Or steroids, right? When we talked about blocking symptoms, steroids are amazing. You give a steroid, the symptom disappears. But after a while, it comes back. And then, when you go on repeated rounds of steroids, you actually suppress your body at the very core, at the cell nucleus level. And so part of the healing process is to liberate our bodies, our minds from unnecessary suppressants.
I love that. That is really, really important. I think like parents really need to know that is that like that, I find especially post COVID, it kind of almost like divided people into the people that were very concerned about the germs and protecting against the germs versus the people that were more hey, like our bodies can fight this off type of a thing. And I always am, finding myself reminding some family and friends, like, if we keep like covering up and, hiding from the germs, our body can't build an immune system. And I think building our immune system is very, very important. And like you said, it's really related to brain health and how people communicate and learn and pay attention. So it's not even just about avoiding going to the doctor and, having a cold for a couple days. It's so much more than that, right?
So much more. Yes. Yes. Because we are also like part of the whole, right? The microorganisms evolve faster, but in a sense, we are also evolving in this process.
Very true. And you mentioned fear with homeopathy, and I remember that as a question that you would ask me during when I was having you work with my son. But a lot of our kids that are picky eaters, they come with this fear that they have developed of food, of trying new foods. And can homeopathy also help kind of suppress some of that fear? And is that something that is, picky eating? Is that one of those little signs of something that a parent could link back to homeopathy? Is that something that could be helped with that?
This is such a fascinating question. Um,
And if you don't have the answer, it's okay. I don't know the answer
okay.
myself.
In a way, I don't have the answer, but I would say that from experience, I've noticed this. On the one hand, an interest in food is part of our human makeup. We want to try new things, right? But when there is a fundamental disturbance, um, food becomes an issue, and the child shrinks from trying new things. I've noticed that when children respond well to homeopathic treatment or support, they spontaneously try new foods.
Oh, that's interesting.
That is the most fascinating thing. It's like I didn't directly address this, but it came about as a part of their healing, which suggests that the fear is not necessarily suppressed, but it's resolved, and the healthy instinct to reach for healthy food, to go towards what supports us is reactivated. Health resurfaces.
Oh, I like that. It's like it was hiding underneath a layer of something,
Yeah. Yes.
right? And it's always been there, but like
Always.
a human desire to try new things and to try foods and to eat healthy. That's really nice. But it makes sense because if you said a lot of what you do revolves around gut health. And if your gut isn't healthy, I imagine that would be that gunky layer that's kind of hiding that natural tendency to eat healthy foods, to try new foods, things like that. So maybe when you resolve the immune inflammation in the gut, maybe that is part of the healing process of, hey, now we're not so hesitant about new foods anymore because we're feeling good. I don't know.
I don't know, but I suspect it's because the gut is communicating with the brain in the right ways when there's gut health, because our neurotransmitters are directly related to our gut, right? I think that's how it works, but I don't know. Speaking of which, one of the most interesting things about children who have food issues and who have developmental issues is that many of them just love dry foods, crispy
Yes,
food,
crunchy foods. Yes, the brown food,
brown
specifically
food.
brown diet.
Yes, potato chips especially.
Yes. Okay.
And
Tell me, what can you
isn't that
tell us?
interesting? So in our materia medica of remedies, one of the remedies that has this amazing affinity for potatoes is aluminium, and it also has severe constipation. Isn't
Really?
that
So
interesting?
aluminum is related to love of potatoes and constipation.
Not the love of constipation, but they do have constipation.
A symptom. Okay, the symptom concept that I've never heard. That's very interesting.
Yes, this is a homeopathic tidbit. So then they are much more restricted. Aluminium is also in the heavy metal series,
Right.
and often there is some confusion about who they are. Um, that's the way homeopaths understand aluminum. And then if you see a child like this, the question is, what is it about the aluminium in them? Are they really resonating with aluminium, or do they have an excess of aluminium through some exogenous factor? And then the question is, what exogenous factor is this, and how
Wait,
can
say
we
that again. Exogenous factor?
exogenous meaning it's external to them. If I myself resonate with aluminum, I might have some confusion of identity. I might naturally love potatoes, and so on. But if I have been poisoned by aluminum, or I've had excess of aluminum because maybe, for whatever reason, vaccinations are a notorious source of aluminum hydroxide. Cooking with aluminum cookware can liberate aluminum into the food. Using aluminum, like, is it
Oh, the
antiperspirant?
deodorant? Yeah, the deodorant.
Yes.
Yep, there's aluminum and deodorant as well, like secret deodorant, like very popular ones.
Right. So these are all, external sources of aluminum. And I think for an adult body, it's not such a big deal. But for a tiny little baby, a little aluminum can become too much quite fast.
Yes.
So that is something to look into. Do we need to clear the aluminum? Do we need to neutralize this external factor?
And I guess so that can be done with homeopathy.
Yes, it can.
Okay, that's great to know. Yeah, because I mean, almost, I'd say more than 90% of our picky eaters love potatoes in some form, whether French fries or chips, or they just seem to love dry, crunchy foods, you know? So,
Interesting, right?
yeah. And is there anything else that you would recommend parents do, other than come and see you? But is there anything else, avoiding, deodorants that have aluminum, and cooking on, non-toxic, even aluminum foil is
Yes,
for food in it. And it's aluminum. It's literally made of aluminum. So,
exactly.
is there anything else I might have missed? I'm always trying to learn new ways to detox.
Eating with the seasons is one. I think keeping it really simple, and not having a fear-based approach to food, that okay, I'm going to get poisoned eating this.
Yeah.
But eating with, I think, just moving towards health. Like, now is late summer, early fall. It's an amazing season to start cooking with root vegetables. Gentle methods of cooking to release the natural sugars. I mean, this is not homeopathic advice. This is just eating, living healthily and doing what nature offers us, right? Nature offers us so many means of moving towards health. Oh, yes. So I think the other thing that we sometimes forget is that our bodies have evolved through eons. So you're Italian, yes, Christine?
I am. Mhm.
You are, you and your ancestors have developed the enzymes, the microbes, the microbiome to handle certain food groups much better than me, from an Asian lineage. Um, this is very interesting. Many of us think of rice as a non-nutrient or whatever, but some of us feel this. Me, not so much, but my daughter, amazingly, she feels like she's not full unless she's had a little bit of rice with each meal. And that's how, this is how we nourish ourselves, not just physically, but also emotionally. And it's finding that sweet spot between emotional nutrition, and physical nutrition, things that feed the soul. That is so important. And some of this is feeling into what really is comfort food. Like, I want to emphasize this. Soups are so comforting. They are the ultimate comfort food. Not so much, macaroni and cheese, but soups. I think every culture, at some point, food. So soups have been the mainstay of comfort.
Yeah, that's a good point. And of course, a lot of our picky eaters won't eat soup, but it's something that we work on. But that is a true, and I like what you were saying about that it's not just, nourishing like the nutrients, but it's also like the cultural aspects and like the emotions that food evokes, right? So in our picky eaters, a lot of foods evoke fear and like negative feelings. And I think that's hard for families because they have this love connection to certain foods, and you want
Yes.
their kids to have that same like affinity and love for those heritage like foods.
Yes.
And I think that's hard sometimes, even really more on the parents than it is the children, that it's like, hey, they don't like what we've had for generations in our family. Like, well, like what's wrong with them? They're not eating the basic, like,
Oh, they
um,
don't love me.
right, right. Yeah. And I think part of that is like becomes a mental thing because it's like, well, a lot of people show their love through cooking and through food and sharing food with people. And when you can't do that with a picky eater, it like kind of puts up a little bit of a wall sometimes of like, okay, well, like, well, if I can't show them I love them through food, then how are we going to do this? you know? It's
Yeah.
hard for families. Now, does the homeopathy also help with like the emotional piece of, or is it more like physical symptoms, or is it can it
No,
be both?
it's both, right? Because the emotions have a physical manifestation, and physical symptoms also have an emotional and mental component.
Mhm.
Um, in reality, they don't come in neat packages. Emotions, we can do this in our materia medica, but it exists in one package in a child. Um, do I have special things for emotions? I think it's like it's always in the context of this child, in the context of his life, his story, his fears, his dreams, how he expresses himself. You know, in drawings, in his actions, in what he avoids, in what he is drawn to, in what he's frightened of. And, fears are not just blanket fears, they're fears of certain things, certain situations. What triggers one child may be different from what triggers another child. Um, and all this is taken into account when we look for a remedy that will help the child to bloom.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and it's hard to separate out the parts of the human body, like science and modern
Yeah.
day medicine has done their best to compartmentalize everything. They have a psychologist for the emotions, they have a cardiologist for the heart, a GI doctor for the intestines and the gut, and but really you can't separate them. You have to kind of, and I think that's what's great about homeopathy is like you bring it all together. Like it just like it all kind of works together somehow. Like you said, it's hard to explain, but that's sort of the magic of it. It just works. It
It
just
is,
brings it
yes.
all together.
Oh, actually, when you mentioned fears, when you're talking about fears, I think
Mhm.
something that occurs to me is that um, sometimes infections, like strep or Lyme, can bring with it certain fears.
Mhm.
Like
That's really
Lyme, I mean, Lyme has photophobia, fear of light sensitivity. Isn't that interesting?
yes, I never knew that.
Strep too, like fear of the dark or wanting to retreat into the dark. What else?
Don't think a lot of people make that connection because I think that, it's not like your doctor says, well, do they have a fear of the dark? Oh, it might be strep. Let's check for that. Like there's like a general disconnect. But I wouldn't have known that either. Like that those are related, that there's those emotional components to an infection like that or a virus.
It is really, really interesting. And both of these, I mean, I have often wondered, how is it possible that a strep infection, which used to affect only the throat, and in worst cases, it manifests as scarlet fever about 200 years ago, how has it become this really frightening disease that becomes pandas. Like what has happened? It's really ultimately it comes down to the state of our terrain, our gut. How has it become so imbalanced that a pathogen, or no, it's not even necessarily a pathogen. It has its upsides. It has its place in our gut. How did strep become something that's so amazingly disruptive?
Yeah.
It's all about the balance. It's all about growing a community of microbes, of fungi, bacteria, so that they work together, just like a human community. We need to work together as opposed to supporting the bullies or allowing the bullies to flourish. And that's the beauty when you have this functional and harmonious community. They all work in a way that supports health.
I love that. That's so, yeah, and that's exactly like what homeopathy is. It's like building a community inside your body that just like supports your whole system, right?
Yes.
That's like
Yes.
a good summary of the whole thing. Now, is there anything I missed? Anything that you really wanted to share that I didn't ask about?
Um, I have been thinking that I think more and more I realize that our children and us are units. We form a unit. So very often one child or a child can be ill, and it's so easy to say, let's fix this child. He's got this problem and that problem and so on. But in a way, the child is there to manifest the problems of the whole unit. And
I like this.
you do. It's
Yes,
not an easy
yes.
thing to take into account, but this is an opportunity for holistic healing, and
Mhm.
the whole family can grow together. The whole community can grow together as a result of paying attention to this imbalance in the whole unit.
I love that. And I feel like that's what I've been leaning more and more towards is that, this, like you said, this specific problem, like this feeding problem that you're currently trying to fix, it might be a manifestation to help you work through something together so that you can grow. Like what can you learn from this experience? Like what benefits can you take out of it? Instead of just attacking it like a problem, instead of saying, "Oh, how can we grow? How can we learn from this?" And I've learned so much from my son's started its feeding issues, and now here I am with a podcast. But you know what I mean? Like what are all of the good that has come out of it? And I think sometimes parents are just like, no, I just like want to fix it now. Like, how much will it cost to fix this problem? And not taking the time to say, hey, maybe this is something that we're all going to go through together and we'll all come out of it on the other side much better off, right?
Christine, this is so beautiful. I think you're really, really onto something. You're really at the forefront of a very important movement, that we're in this together by healing our child, our children. We are healing something very, very important in ourselves, very vulnerable. And it's like it spreads out into the whole community, into the healing of our families, our communities, Mother Earth.
Hmm. Right? Yeah, we're all connected. So it's,
Yeah.
yeah, it's more like instead of you saying like, oh, well, my kid has this problem, it's more like it's a reflection of maybe an internal problem you might not even realize you're having. But in helping your child, hopefully you also heal yourself as the parent. It's almost like they came to you with this problem on purpose so that you can learn and grow, right?
That's, yes, if you can take that on, that is a beautiful way of looking at it. So I would say, maybe sometimes, maybe almost a gentler way of looking at it is, this is this is your child is the teacher,
Mhm.
and this problem has something to teach all of us. So what is the lesson? What can we do?
I like that. Yeah, that's a nicer way.
Maybe I don't have the guts to say, let's look at the problem in you.
Yeah. Well, but I'm the first to admit that like there was stuff that I needed to work on, and I did. I'm still working on it, but it's because of him, right? So he's the teacher and I'm the student.
And
So,
we're all learning together.
mhm. Yeah, and we're all growing and learning, and I help him, and in turn he helps me, right? In different ways. But
Yes.
yes, essentially, that's what it is.
Beautiful journey, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And it
And
takes a lot of patience.
oh, yes, right. It's not a quick fix. I always say the therapy we do, it's not a quick fix. If you're looking for a quick fix, that's not with us. But it's a transformative fix and it's a life-changing fix,
Yes.
right? It's more
Yes.
long lasting than just like, okay, well, I want him eating this by next week. That's
Or
not
tomorrow.
that's not gonna happen. But I think it's better when it's a little bit of a wait because you appreciate it more at the end.
Right. And feeding itself can be such a test of patience in many ways, right?
Oh yeah. Yep. Mostly on the parent side, I think. But yes, a lot of patience. Um, but yeah, I
And
mean, sorry.
this is amazing, right? And what I want to say is the work you do is so important because many of us are parenting um, in the context of a nuclear family. So it becomes mother and child, and then the mother is wondering, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? And what's wrong with my child? I think traditionally, in extended families, there is more of a store of wisdom, a kind of like, everybody does things together. It may not be the right thing, but at least it's tried, and we've all done this. And mom has less on her plate in the sense that it's not her fault if she's not doing it all correctly, if she's not cooking the thing that makes baby an amazing eater, makes baby put on pounds, get rosy, and so on. Mom is not totally at fault because she has so much support and she has time to nourish herself. And what you're doing is hand holding that is so important.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I know it's true. The families of in America today are very different than they were in the past, and even just around the globe. Like, I mean, I have family in Italy, and they're so tight knit. They see extended family daily, and there just is that more of like a tight knit. Like, there's more help raising children, and it's just very different dynamic. Like you said, we're very like nuclear, like everyone's kind of in their own pod, on
Yeah.
their own. They're off on their own island, and it's every man for themselves. It's like you against people, where in other places it's more like community, like you said, and that does change the dynamic of feeding for sure,
Yes, yes.
for sure.
And
But
our children are not the same, right?
no,
They have so many sensitivities that children of 50 years ago never did
no,
because they're facing different issues.
very, very true. Yeah, there's so many autoimmune disorders, sensitivities, just when there just wasn't before,
Yes.
but there's, toxins everywhere in their fertilizer in their front yard, in their refrigerators, in their soaps, and, it's just, so it's everywhere. But but the more people know about it, then you could do something about it, right?
Yes.
That's what
Yes.
we're here to share.
Right. There's always time, we can always do something about it.
Always, yes.
Yeah.
And you're a great resource for parents to, if they want to do something about it, to come to you.
Thank you.
Now, where can people find you?
I work from New York City in Soho. I have an office in Soho, New York. And I also see people for virtual consultations. And the best way to reach me is through my website, www.homeopathystudio.com. And I typically offer 20-minute discovery calls before a parent makes an appointment or somebody makes an appointment to see me, because then we can figure out whether this is the right thing, this is the right fit. And sometimes I refer people out, or I suggest maybe they're not ready, or they get the information and think, "Oh, okay, I'll think about it." But I think it's so important to find the right relationship when you're working with a therapist.
I agree. And you have to like trust,
Yes.
that they're not going to give you something like we were saying before, like that you're like, wait, what is this ingredient? Is it okay? And yeah. And, you have that trust. And I do. I trust you completely.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, you've been very, very helpful to our family. So I know you will be to many, many other families as well. So yeah, please check out Joanne's website, Homeopathy Studio, and I'm sure she'll be able to give you some great help and advice. Don't forget to visit us at foodologyfeeding.com if you need feeding help or one-to-one help for your child. Also, thank you so much for listening. Please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. It really helps people find the channel and get the help that they need. So that's it today, and we'll see you again really soon.
Thank you for listening to How to Unpicky Your Picky Eater. To learn more about achieving your child's feeding goals, check out Christine's website at foodologyfeeding.com. And be sure to tune in next time to How to Unpicky Your Picky Eater.